The battle of the Democrats continues. Former Vice President Joe Biden is now calling out Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, defending his record, slamming her campaign's approach in the election, saying this in a blog post on Medium. Some call it the my way or the highway approach to politics, but it's worse than that. It's condescending to the millions of Democrats who have a different view. It's representative of an elitism that working and middle-class people do not share. We know best. You know nothing. If you were only as smart as I am, you would agree with me. This is no way to get anything done. This is no way to bring the country together, writes Biden. This is no way for this party to beat Donald Trump. Joining us right now is the president of the Stagwell Group. He is managing partner as well and former senior advisor to the Clintons, Mark Penn. Mark, good to see you.
Morning.
Your reaction to Biden taking out Elizabeth Warren?
Well, I think you see the fight is joined. I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren primarily has voters from well-educated, suburban Democratic class, and Joe Biden is running as the moderate working-class candidate, and he staked that territory out quite strongly in that op-ed. I think it was a good exchange. I think he's the winner in that one.
So you think Biden is okay? You think none of this stuff about Hunter Biden, I mean, how is that affecting him?
Well, look, I think that this race is tightening up. Warren has shown some move forward, but I think when she came out with her health care plan, and I've lost track, 30 trillion, 50 trillion, how much that health care plan is.
52 trillion, that's right.
I think she set herself back, and I think Biden's seizing the opportunity that's open for moderates. I think he's on the defensive in the general election about his son. But in the Democratic primary, he's been holding on to his votes.
I just want to say that John Solomon is out with, breaking reports, basically saying there's evidence that conflicts with what Joe Biden has said about his son Hunter Biden's story, that in fact, Joe Biden is trying to distance himself, that he even knew that he was on the Burisma board. But in fact, there is evidence within the Obama administration records that show that he was afraid that his son was on the board of this Ukrainian gas company. You don't think it's impacting Biden?
I've seen the John Solomon reports, but it's not in the rest of the media if you search for it. So are they going to validate those emails? Look, I thought those emails in the State Department were pretty significant, but I'm looking for the rest of the media to validate it. Otherwise, is it affecting Biden? No. Democratic voters are not getting the John Solomon story.
But they're not going to go after one another in this cycle until the nominee is chosen about these very things. Who has called out Elizabeth Warren for lying about her ethnicity for literally decades? Remember, Harvard Law School was pushing her as their first woman of color. She did it despite, being a smart, strong woman wasn't enough. She had to lie about being a Native American, or excuse me, American Indian is what was on her bar application when she was in Texas.
She wrote that. That was her handwriting that wrote, "I'm American Indian."
They are not going to go after one another on these things. Could it, as more information comes out, could it hurt Biden if he is the nominee? Absolutely. But right now, the Democrats, again, are trying to avoid firing on one another figuratively.
Although this is a bit of a skirmish here. I think Biden deliberately said, after she attacked him first, she said, look, what primary are you in? And he said, no, I'm in the right primary.
But this is on policy. What I'm saying is, rather than the personal, they're going after one another on policy. But Biden's in the camp. The Kaiser Family Foundation found 55% of Democrats prefer a candidate who would build on the existing Affordable Care Act. Only 40% want to replace the ACA with Medicare for all. Again, Elizabeth Warren's voters, her voting bloc are people who don't understand math, as suppose.
Let me ask, Mark, let me ask a question about that universal health that she's pushing so hard. You talked about the cost of it. Let's get to reality. So the UAW just was on strike for 40-some days. Teachers union in Illinois on strike. Do you think they're going to give up their health care program? The UAW is only paying 5%. They tried to get them to 15, which is half of the country's average. Do you really think they're going to vote for somebody that's going to take their health care away?
Look, I think Warren was surging until she came out with this plan. This plan is a bit of an albatross for her because it's got the $50 trillion cost, and it's got the question of what happens to middle-class taxpayers. And I think that's blunted her momentum, and I don't know whether she's going to figure her way out of it. And I think Biden has said, hey, look, I stand for the working class of America. Right. I can beat Trump. That's a plan that could never pass the general election of this country.
Exactly, yeah.
How about 2020 fundraising? There's a new report from Bloomberg that says Democrats cool on Wall Street donors, and the feeling is mutual. neutral, detailing new fundraising issues in the Democratic Party, noting grassroots fundraising has become more important to Democratic candidates than wealthy donors. Elizabeth Warren has repeatedly claimed that she won't be holding fundraisers for wealthy donors, but that hasn't stopped attending events hosted by the DNC. In other words, Mark, she's saying, I'm not going to accept any money from wealthy donors, and yet she accepts the money from the DNC indirectly. That's from wealthy donors. Hello? We're not stupid.
Remember, and Joe Biden here who was against PACs, has now kind of changed his mind when he ran a little short. Look, and people in politics need money to run their campaigns. They used to get it only from so-called fat cat donors. Today, the internet provides a new avenue. Republicans are doing incredibly well on internet funding as well. There was no tradition in this country for political fundraising. Small and big donors are here to stay. Big donors are pooling together lots of money. This is going to be a $5 billion campaign. This will make or break every television network and every internet platform out there, except Twitter, which doesn't accept political ads.
That's right. Wow, game on.
Mark, at what point do we kind of get to the tipping point for the liberal media and how they are really backing these candidates? And like Dagan mentioned earlier, you know, they talk about policy, but they won't talk about anything personal. I have not seen one liberal publication go after any of these allegations for these Democratic candidates. Is that a part of their strategy? Is this something that's being communicated? And when we get to the general elections, will we have a tipping point that makes them really come to truth?
They continue to look like an arm of the Democratic Party.
No doubt.
That's absolutely right. And this John Solomon story is real. He uncovered memos that show multiple drafts of a Q&A memo when they were preparing Marie Yovanovitch, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. They were preparing her to handle a question about Burisma and Joe Biden's son on the board. And they said, just stick to the simple answer. In other words, they were all worried about Joe Biden's son.
One other thing the Wall Street Journal is reporting today about this very thing, a consulting firm that was hired by Burisma mentioned that the former vice president's son, Hunter Biden, was serving on the Ukrainian gas company's board at the time, so the firm could leverage a meeting with the State Department.
Well, look,
there you go.
Yeah. No, I think
quid pro quo.
Solomon's stories show that the State Department officials were well aware that Hunter Biden was on this company's board. And you see that in the emails. Look, I think when it comes to the media, we're back to the 1800s here between which paper and which media is on which side. And that's why all the stories are not getting out to the public. It's a shame. I hope that's going to change.
Before you go, Mark, you have said in the last couple of weeks, that you think there is still a chance Hillary Clinton enters this race. Do you still believe that?
I think when you look at the race, 3 or 4 people are, I believe, most likely seriously considering it. And I had a poll just last week that showed that if Hillary, Kerry, and Bloomberg were to get in, she would split Biden's vote in half, and she'd be tied with Biden. So is there a constituency in the Democratic Party for Hillary Clinton in this race? Yes. Will she get in? I don't know, but I'm sure everybody's thinking about it because that's what politicians and former politicians do.
You think it's a brokered convention?
I think right now we seem to be headed to a brokered convention because it looks to me like Sanders, Warren, Mayor Pete, right, and Biden all have their constituencies, some working class, some elite, some younger.
Yes.
And I don't see anyone coming out with a majority in a proportional system right now.
Exactly.
My prediction, she won't get in because she'll have to explain her husband's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein beyond a statement trying to explain away the flights he was taking on what was dubbed by many the Lolita Express, a private jet owned and operated by a known pedophile.
Did you see the late night show when who was it? It wasn't Jimmy Kimmel. When they said to her, "How did you kill Jeffrey Epstein?" I mean,
it was Comedy Central.
It's Comedy Central. I mean, they're making jokes about it. It's like sort of hitting pop culture on that. That's unbelievable. Mark, it's great to see you. And just to be clear, you said Kerry. That meant John Kerry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mark Penn joining us there.